Welcome to Open Arms, an honest conversation about firearms. Hey everyone, I'm your host Brian Lockerman, and today's episode is brought to you by Eastwind Screenprinting out of Thousand Oaks, California. And today we are doing a giveaway, an Open Arms t-shirt and an Open Arms hat. All you have to do is follow us on Instagram, read the description below, and be eligible to win. Today on my show, I have a very special guest. I have attorney Anthony Vieira. How you doing there, Tony?
Good, Brian. What about yourself?
Very good. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Absolutely.
Tony, just give us a little rundown about yourself.
Well, just to keep a fairly long short story short, so I'm a country kid, right? So okay. I was born in rural Southern Illinois, grew up there. Went to law school in Chicago, joined the Navy, was in the Navy for 4.5 or so years, up in the Bay Area mostly, but other places as well. Then I moved to L.A., was a L.A. County Deputy District Attorney for 5 years.
Nice.
Then moved back up to San Francisco, did some civil trial work, stayed there for a while. That was my second San Francisco stint. Moved back to L.A., and I've had my own firm down here for quite some time, and mostly what I do is courtroom stuff.
Very good. That's all you do? That's it?
That's pretty much it. I mean, I have some other interests, and maybe we talk about those as we go. But
good deal. Good deal.
You know.
Well, very good, Tony. Well,
Yeah.
well again, I have a lot of questions for you because we get a lot of questions in our safety classes after they're all said and done, and they're legal questions. And maybe you can help understand us understand these things, these topics. One of them that always comes to mind is after they're all done and with their training and they have their gun at home and you know they feel they're safe. When are they allowed by law to protect their family? You know that question comes up more than often.
Right. So that's got to be the central question, right? So,
yeah.
So the way that it's normally spoken of is a man's house is his castle.
Exactly.
Right, and that's not something that somebody imagined yesterday or even in 1900. This has been really the rule coming down from English common law for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And the notion is that if somebody is so bold as to intrude on your home, they probably are doing it armed. And they certainly have decided that it's worthwhile for them to put themselves in a dangerous place. You're in a dangerous place. Your family's in a dangerous place.
That's correct.
And again, this is not something that we're just now discovering. So there's still gray in that.
Yeah.
Right? So in California, the basic rules of self-defense applied not only to me defending myself, but I also have the ability to defend third persons, right? Just as I would have the ability to defend myself.
Exactly.
The rule is exactly the same. And the rule is a little bit vague, but what the rule says is I have the right to reasonable self-defense. So
okay.
the way that
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
the way that might work out is this. So let's say that I have some reasonable belief that someone is going to harm me, someone I love, or someone I've just met.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're going to seriously harm them. Let's say that I'm concerned that they might cause great bodily injury, right? That phrase itself is also kind of vague within the law. That's why I say there's always some gray here. But I have the ability to respond with force, including killing that person to stop them from harming me, a loved one, or somebody I'm with in that particular scenario. And
that's been the question always asked to us. And I'm a sole believer of that too. If someone's coming in to harm me or my family, I will do whatever it takes to protect them. And I'm not going to second guess it.
Right.
So, you know, and people do. They hear these horror stories about people getting, you know, in trouble by the law when all they're doing is protecting their business or their home and their family. You know, and that's kind of where that gray area is, like you're saying. I think there has to be more like a black and white thing about that, you know?
Yeah, so I think ideally that would be the case, but when it comes to things of this sort, I think it's difficult to find a black and white formulation, which is why after hundreds of years of attempting to refine the rule, What adjudicates whether I'm right or wrong in a particular circumstance? The law says what's reasonable.
Exactly.
And so if you are in a system where you have a system that has integrity, judges that have integrity, jurors that take their responsibility appropriately even before that, police agencies that do the same thing, then you're okay, right? People understand when if somebody comes in your house, you have the right to respond to protect yourself and your family. When you're out away from the home, things become even more gray, but you still retain what's called that reasonable right of self-defense. That's the general rule.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know. Good to know that we're, doing the right thing there. Here's another thing I want to bring up. Over the years, a lot of laws about buying a gun has changed. There's these background checks, paperwork. You have to do this, do that, do that. Now, I'm not saying I'm against it, but what I'm thinking is it's not really doing anything for the criminal part of the world. When I grew up as a kid, we had our local gun store. And you go down to the gun store and there'd be barrels of Walther P08s and P38s and barrels of M1 carbines and M1 Grands from surplus, and $10 or $20, you'd buy one of those things and walk it out the door. And you never heard of any of this crazy mass shootings and crimes and stuff like that back in the day. And there wasn't any paperwork. There wasn't. It was cash and carry. Now, again, I'm not saying it's not a bad thing for the background check and things like that, but what's your opinion on all that?
Well, I mean, things have changed, right? Something has changed in the culture. So if you did a mind experiment and you said, are there as many guns per capita today as there was then? Trying to figure out, is it the proliferation of guns that is the cause of these mass shootings, or is it some other variable? I think you'd have to come to the conclusion that it's some other variable. It's not the guns.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned how it was when you were a kid. When I was a kid in the Midwest, everybody had a gun rack in the back of the pickup truck.
It does
and
too.
There was a gun in that gun rack, and that gun was loaded.
Uh-huh.
When I was probably 10 years old, I got my first .22 semi-auto.
Yep.
Right? I was hunting squirrels. I was hunting rabbits. I never shot anybody. My dad taught me how to use the gun.
Exactly.
I respected the gun. Matter of fact, I can recall being a little bit afraid of the gun, but I revered what I had. I knew it was a thing of power. I remember being in school in 7th grade and attending class where everybody brought their guns for the day.
Uh-huh.
Right? I had a teacher who taught gun safety courses.
Oh,
right?
Awesome.
Nobody got shot. None of these happens. These things happen. And it's clearly the case that we have more mass shootings now. Something has happened in the culture to degrade the culture that's caused this problem. And maybe it's not one simple thing, one single thing rather, but there is something that has happened.
You're correct.
The other thing I would say is this. You mentioned the availability of cheap guns. You can actually look back at Old English history, and you can see where they would outlaw what they would call cheap weapons. This actually happened in the United States too, in the late 1930s. They attempted to outlaw what they said were inexpensive handguns, but all that did was took guns out of the hands of common people. And just like it was in Old England, if you were wealthy, you could have a gun.
Yeah.
But nobody else could have a gun. So you had a two-tiered system, right? Which is kind of what they want to do now, because if the police are the only ones that can have the guns and regular people can't have the guns, right? Then we've created another two-tiered system where if rich people can have guns, let's say they create a situation, and this is becoming more and more common, where they're putting extraordinary excise taxes on gun ownership, right?
Yeah.
Only the rich are going to be able to have guns. So the poor are deprived of what really has always been, in political theory, deemed the fundamental right of nature, and that is a man's ability to protect himself and his family. So there's all these inequities and distortions that come in because these people have not thought through what they're doing from a policy standpoint. They have no respect for history.
Nope.
They don't know anything about where we've come from. They don't know any. They don't understand the notion of tyranny, that it still exists within man even today.
Exactly.
All this stuff is being ignored for the sake of some other end, and we can get to that, I guess, at some point. But
What's the definition of the Second Amendment?
I don't know. What is the definition of the Second Amendment?
Well, it's not for hunting, obviously.
Yeah.
It's to protect yourself from the government, basically.
Yeah. Here's some thoughts on that. So, if you go back, and I'll keep doing this because I have a love for history, but if you look at some of the acts that were passed in England, so prior to about 1689, almost to the beginning of time, the common man was not only allowed to have weapons, but he was expected to have weapons.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing was true in the early Roman Republic. The citizenry was to be armed, and the citizenry was to be armed so that they could provide for their families hunting, so that they could resist enemies from without and the tyrant from within.
Yes.
And that's been true for all those time periods. As a ruse, at various points in English history, they would say, we want to protect the king's forests and the king's game, and the king owns all the forests and all the game, so no more hunting. We're taking your weapons away. But that was only designed as kind of a head fake, an excuse for taking away the man's weapons, so the tyrant could do whatever the tyrant wanted to do.
Exactly.
So there is, even if you look at some of the discussions now out of the Heller case, I think Justice Scalia, who's no longer with us, self-defense is part of it, but it is also, and I think this is a less important point for us in our American history, it's primarily it's to resist the tyrant, but it's also for personal self-defense, and it's for hunting. It's for all these things.
Yep. Well, another thing that, like the state of California is trying to do, I don't know if you're aware of this, they have a thing called a drop test that gun manufacturers have to pay to have the gun dropped, it's like 3 feet or something like that, see if it goes off. Now, it's not the fact that they're really worried about that gun going off. They're doing it so the manufacturer will say, we're not going to pay that kind of money for your test, so therefore, forget it. You're not going to sell our gun in your state. And they're slowly doing that because people are coming into gun stores in California saying, well, but how come I can't buy this? Oh, because California wants them to do this drop test. The manufacturer says, we're not doing it. And then that way they can't buy that gun. So they're slowly trying to get rid of as many guns as possible by things like that.
Right.
And that really irritates me. I don't know if you're well aware of that or not.
Well, I mean, I have heard that, right? But it seems to me like it's just another game.
That's what it is.
Right? I mean, whether you tax the consumer or whether you effectively tax the manufacturer, you are still doing what? You are abridging the right to keep and bear arms.
Exactly.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they should at least be honest about it, right?
I know.
So if they're going to attempt to disrespect our constitutional principles, right, that matter, they're not just words on a paper, they actually matter. They have far-ranging consequences in terms of disrespect of them, and that's exactly what's happening here. They should just say it.
Yeah, I know it, right?
Just say we're not patriots.
Yeah.
We hate the Constitution.
Yep.
We hate this thing that constrains us. We want to do whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So Cicero, the ancient Roman lawyer, said that civilized men respond to logic. Barbarians respond to necessity. And what's necessity? It's agenda.
Yeah.
Right? It's agenda. It's what I want that's immediately in front of me, power I want to acquire, money I want to acquire. Sometimes it's psychological stuff like I want to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And that's as crazy as it gets. And we're adults, and this is the way it rolls now.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, have you had good training experience for safety over the years of owning guns?
Yeah, I like I said, when I grew up,
Yeah.
I had all kinds of gun safety courses, And before I
So
even
have I.
got there, before I got the 22, I had a BB gun probably when I was
Oh yeah.
5,
Uh-huh.
right? And I was the crazy little kid all by myself out shooting my BB gun all day. And then you go on and you have the training and
Yeah. Well, that's why I put the show Open Arms together.
yeah.
I want a lot of people don't know that. They don't realize that. A lot of people buying these first-time guns are buying them and just, doing whatever with, run them under a bed or whatever, and no safety training whatsoever.
Right.
We're trying to teach America that is very important. That's how I grew up. I grew up with my fathers, my uncles, my grandfathers teaching me gun safety, going through safety courses. You had to go through a hunter safety course before you got your hunter's license. All that was really good knowledge back in the day.
Right.
And that's what kept me safe all those years,
Right.
being a shooter.
Right.
And I just one time a light bulb went on in my head and said, I got to show America the importance of this.
Well, that's
I
where
want to
you're-
show them about how important gun safety is. I want to show them that there is, the mental health issues of gun ownership as well. We want to tap on all these things.
That's why your project is so important.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are mental health issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's gun safety issues, but there's also broader notion of where do we come from? Who are we as Americans?
Yeah.
Is this just a bunch of ridiculous tradition, or is there something substantive to all of this that we need in our lives? So we can talk about gun rights, but guess what? When we talk about gun rights, we also can talk about other rights that exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you actually just sat down and took 15 minutes and read, let's say, the first 7 amendments to the Constitution, you would say to yourself, and I did this recently. I said, these folks were doing this in the shadow of a tyrannical government that was trying to take all of their stuff and to snuff out their lives.
Yep.
Right? And so all of these things in your project necessarily bears on, not just the rights or the safety, but on issues of family.
100%.
Right? All these things.
Yep.
And it's an opportunity for you to teach people. I think it's just great that you're doing it.
Well, thanks, Tony.
Absolutely.
And you brought up that family thing, and we do incorporate the family values. I feel that we're losing our family values, and we need to bring that back too. It makes a difference. I mean, when I grew up as a kid, we had family dinners. We got to talk to my mom and dad. Let's say I was getting bullied in school. I could talk to my mom and dad about it. They would say, talk to your counselors. I actually have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, kids just, they shelter themselves. They don't have that communication with their parents or their counselors. They go and they play their video game, and they think that that's life, And I want to try to bring that back again.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's tough. It's a tough road, but I'm going to try to make it happen with the project.
Yeah, well, I think you will, right? So we habituate ourselves moment by moment to do good things, right? And it affects the people around us.
Oh, yeah.
You could habituate yourself the other way, too.
Yeah.
Right? We could name any number of things that cause destruction in our lives, right? But on a grassroots level, if you're talking about it, I'm talking about it, other people are catching fire and they're talking about it, this stuff matters.
It does.
It's the thing that that allows people's lives to flourish, and not be destroyed by all these things that are present in our culture that are causing these problems that we have.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, thank you very much. I think everything you have talked about today has been just very, very, very knowledgeable. Again, I'd like to even bring you back for more episodes because there's going to be more things brought up legally that people want to talk about,
Sure.
which would be fantastic.
Sure.
And again, I can't thank you enough for coming in today.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome. I enjoyed being here.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. And keep in mind, you want to follow us on Spotify, Apple, and Instagram. Comment below. And if you want to be on my show, hit us up. Let me know. I don't care if you're anti-gun, pro-gun, whatever, we'll have you on. And never forget, safety, family, and the Second Amendment.